Hello everybody, I am Ben from Team Panic, and today we're going to be continuing with my weapon tutorial series by looking at how you make a single-toothed weapon, just like this one. So the first video in this series was looking at how MOI and bite, or moment of inertia and bite, play into how and what size and shape you design a combat robot weapon. So a single-toothed disc is one of the weapon types that I discussed in that video. There will be a link to that in the description down below. But just as a quick recap, this is the highest bite weapon that you can get, which is useful in a number of different scenarios. Again, link to that video will be in the description down below. But of course, this weapon type is one of the hardest weapon types to actually design. A straightforwards bar type weapon can be designed quite quickly and quite easily in most CAD softwares, but these require a little bit of balancing. So today we're going to have a look at how I go ahead and do that. I do this in Fusion 360, which, yeah, Autodesk has made some changes to Fusion 360 recently, but the stuff that we are going to do today, it's still okay for. I will also say that this is just my methodology. It is one methodology of doing this. It's probably not even the best methodology, and it's certainly not the only methodology for doing this, but I can say that the weapons that I have designed have gone onto combat robots no problem. I've just sent these files straight to a laser cutter. They have laser or plasma cut them and sent them back to me, and they've spun up without any real worries. So you should be able to follow this and be able to do similar things. So let's get on to Fusion 360. All right, so here we are in Fusion 360. Now, before we get started on a design here, we need three different things. We need to know how we're going to do our center point for the design. So you need to know what your axle size is and any bolt holes you need around that axle size. That's the first point. The second point is you need to know the total diameter of the actual weapon itself, your spinnable area. And then finally, you need to know a weight of these things. So we're going to start this by creating a sketch, and I always create a sketch on the top-down plane. And then I'm going to go and create a circle in the middle, so you can use C, the keyboard shortcut, to create a center point circle like this. Now, the design I'm doing, I need a 22 and a bit mil circle in the middle here, so that's what I'm going to create first. And then so this is going to be the hole. This is going to be a hole that allows a bearing through the middle of this weapon. So I need something around the outside of that that's actually going to hold all the bolt holes and also give this some mass to actually have the bearing pass through. So for me, that needs to be 45 millimeters. And my Fusion is doing a thing where it's not jumping to where I want it to go, so that's cool. I'm just going to tell it to go there now. Cool, so this is the middle of my design, and this here is a concentric point, which is where we want the center of mass of the final design to be. But at the moment, it's just the center of these two circles. The next thing I want to do is zoom out a little bit and create my circle that gives me the radius of the weapon. So in this case, we're doing 110 millimeters, and my Fusion is again doing this thing where it's ignoring the numbers that I type into it. So I'm just going to click and then change the dimension of that to be 110, which is what I want it to be. So now, this is everything that we need so far. I actually might pull this in just a little bit, but you don't have to do this. You just set up your center hole, set up your bolt holes. I'll set up my bolt holes in a little bit because it doesn't really pertain to anything else that we're doing. I might also just drag these around a little bit just so that they are offline, so that they're a little bit more spaced out and we can see what's going on. Now, this is a bit of a weird weapon that I'm designing, but the principles of the thing are the same. So the next thing we need is a line out from our center point out to the edge here. So we're going to create a line. We're going to grab hold of the center point. We're going to go all the way out to the edge here, and then we're going to get rid of the line tool with the escape button. And we're going to click on this line and then click over here where it says construction in the sketch palette option. So what this means, this is giving us a center line down one of the faces or down the arm of the weapon. We don't need this to be a solid line because solid line will actually interact with things. All we need it for is a reference point, which is why we're doing this construction. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to mirror that, offset that construction line. So you can do this in a number of different ways, and one of them would be to do it inside here. I personally just use the offset tool, so I'll grab that construction line and I'll offset it. In this case, I'm going to offset, I think, by 5 mil. So I'm just going to come up to the offset line and go there and offset. Now, the other way to do this would be to delete that, create another line from the center here, go down your desired distance, and then get rid of the line tool, create that as a construction line, and then do a line from here straight out to our center point like that. So that should be exactly the same thing, but you might need to use D and dimension this so that it actually sits there and is a nice solid black line rather than a blue line. Now, this here is our weapon bar section. So what you can see is we've got our hole for our bearing, we've got our steel, which is going to have bolt holes for me, and then this here, between here and the edge, this is our bar, and we're actually going to have this mirrored across this line a little bit later. But first, we need to put a tooth on this thing. So the best way to do a tooth is to actually create another line out from the center here. So we're going to create a line out from the center, and again, we're just going to touch it onto our exterior surface. But the thing that we care about in this case is our angle. So I'm going to put this out at about a 12, I reckon, and we're going to leave that there. I'm also going to move this guy away from that. So what we've got now is this line that points back towards the center point. And the reason we're doing this is we want the surface, because this is going to form the surface that we hit with as a weapon. So this is going to form the surface of the hitting point, and we want this surface to be in line with the center point so that when it spins, you're hitting with a flat face in relation to the arc and the spin of the weapon. So that is how we're going to start and set up our weapon. And let me just get myself lined. So the next thing we want to do is then join this weapon tooth back over to here somewhere. Maybe I use a conic curve for this. Basically, I'm just creating a curve between here and there, and that creates our weapon tooth. So if you know the bite of your weapon, you can precisely down this line up your weapon bite. I haven't calculated my weapon bite for this particular weapon, and it doesn't really matter too much for this particular weapon. So I'm just going to place this line kind of in here. But if you know your weapon bite, you can work out the point here that you need to actually create your weapon bite with. Now, next thing we're going to do is we're going to go up to the top and go to the mirror command, and we are going to mirror this line, and that line. And the mirror line we're going to use is the one we used before. Boom, like that. Okay, so we do have extra lines on the page here, and there are ways to get rid of them, but the reason I'm not going to is for this. So because we've got this 12-degree arc in here, if later on we need to change this, I can just come into here, double click on that 12, change it to a 15, hit OK, and bam, I now have a much wider weapon head or impact point on this weapon than I did before. If you go through and there's like ways to change points and like break lines and things, it will also break all of their references. So that changes up how these things work. Now, again, this might not be fully true. I'm not super experienced at Fusion 360, so there might be a way of like breaking this line at this point and still having this reference in place and stuff, but I don't know how to do those things, so I just live with these extra kind of lines in my designs, and it doesn't usually get too far out of hand. Anyway, moving right along. So we now have this set up. So we've got our weapon head set up, but now we need to balance that And to start with, we really don't know too much about how we're going to balance that. So what we're going to do though is we're going to create a new circle, and this circle, we just want to kind of approximate out a little bit under our bite of our weapon. So for me, you can see that the bite of my weapon, my weapon's, like the edge of that weapon tip is somewhere around 95 mil in diameter. So if I go to like 85 mil, that gives us 10 mil extra on top of our weapon bite that we're not colliding with things with the counterweight of the weapon. So that's probably about good for what we need. So I'm just going to do 85 like that. Now we have a section that we've got for a counterweight. So the final thing to do is actually to do some extra lines. So a good starting point, I like with this, so you go from the center point again, and we're going all the way out to that new circle that you've created, and probably start at about 120 degrees from your reference line. So like what I'm doing here. Although that did not dimension up properly, so I just need to hit D to dimension that, and we'll get the angle going, because that's the thing that we really care about here. We want to do that at 120, like that. Okay, so now we have this line, which is dimensioned out from this main section at 120 degrees, and we want to mirror that. So we're going to grab this line, we're going to select our mirror line as that reference line we did before, and hit OK. Now, this looks like a mess. It looks like a real mess right now, but hidden inside here is a weapon bar. So let's get it out. And the way we do that is go Finish Sketch, then hit E to extrude a profile. So the first thing we need is we need everything in this circle, because this circle is the bit that I'm going to put my bolt holes in, and I'll do that again. I'll do that later. It doesn't really have to happen here, but these is where I'll put my bolt holes to mount up the pulley that will run this weapon. Then we need the bar of the weapon. Then we need the teeth. Oh, and looks like my shapes don't match up properly. Something is broken. Aha. This point here isn't exactly on this line, so we need to cancel this extrude and go back into the sketch, which I can do by going into here and clicking into the sketch, and this point needs to be on that line. Now both of them are, so we've got a fully enclosed tooth on either side. Okay, so we'll go back out and we'll go back into our extrude. So once again, we're grabbing the bits that we know we 100% want. So we'll grab the bar, grab the weapon teeth. Now we're going to grab the counterweight, which is everything between the bit that we do want and this counterweight line that we said, and between the two exterior lines here. And then we're going to go start at profile plane, direction symmetric, and extent is a distance. And then our distance, we want half of whatever thickness you want for your blade. So for me, these are going to be 5 mil blades, so I want 2.5. And that is a 5 mil blade that we've made. Also, it looks like I missed little sections in here, which does happen when you leave those extra lines in. You can sometimes miss sections, but you can go back down to the timeline at the bottom, right click, go edit feature, and we should be able to, there we go, click that one in place and click that one in place, and now we have a fully formed bar. This is looking a little bit ridiculous at the moment, but there we go, we have a fully formed weapon bar. I don't know quite what happened here. I must have missed a little section in here as well, because those should be joined up. Anyway, for now, what I want to do is work out how to balance this thing. So we're going to turn this sketch back on. Fusion will automatically turn this sketch off as soon as you've used it, but you want to turn that sketch back on because that's how you know where the center of that hole is in this sketch. Okay, so how do we find out where the center of mass for this object is? We go into inspect, we go to center of mass, and then we click on the one body that we've created, the weapon bar, and we click OK. So right now you can see that the center of mass, which is what this thing is here, this little crosshair thing, is well over this side. So that means that this counterweight is way too heavy and the center of mass is way outside the balance point. So we can do two things. We can either increase the size and the weight of the tooth and the bar over here, or we can remove weight from the counterbalance. And the way we're going to decide how we're going to do this is by going into bodies, clicking on the body, and going physical material. So the physical material thing should come up. Inside here, you want to find steel. I've already done this and it's at the top. Click and drag that onto the body and then hit close. All this is doing is setting this body now to be a steel body inside Fusion 360. Then what we want to do is we want to right click it again and go properties. Now in here, you should see this density. That is the steel density. If you don't, go back and do the density, the other step again. And what we can see from this is that this bar is 116 grams. Now, the bar that I want is heavier than that. I want a 150 gram bar. So that makes the decision to beef up the weapon tooth side of this a lot easier, because I know I want to either put mass on this side or take mass away, but on the whole, I want this weapon bar to be heavier. So I'm going to put more mass into the weapon teeth rather than take it out of the counterbalance. Both of these things are easy, or both of these things are easy with the way this weapon bar is set up, and both of them will do the same thing. So the way I'm going to add weight into this weapon bar is pretty simple. Right here we have this dimension, which gives us the thickness of the bar. If we buff this up, we say 8 mil rather than 5 mil. That pushes the weapon bar out. And then we have this dimension here, which is the angle of our tooth. So again, if we push this out, and let's just go crazy with this and go out to 20, that pushes out the weapon teeth, it pushes out the bar, and everything is, is pretty good. So then all we need to do is adjust the curve so that the curve now sits where you would expect the curve to sit to kind of make a hammerhead weapon tooth, and hit finish sketch. And when we do that, we should see that because Fusion 360 is magic and has this whole timeline feature, it automatically updates the actual output shaft, the output weapon, and it also automatically updates the center of gravity. So you can see we've pushed the center of gravity from somewhere here to somewhere here, which means we haven't gone far enough. However, this weapon is starting to look a little bit ridiculous. So I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to remove some mass out of the counterweight. I will also just quickly check the properties of this. So our mass at the moment is 126, and it's going to go back down when I remove some out of the counterweight. But at the moment, with this design and how this is looking, I probably need to find a way to add extra radius to put more mass into here, or change the thickness of the weapon bar to get more radius into here, because yeah, this weapon, I think that's wide enough for the moment. So we're going to go back into the sketch, just double click into the sketch, and we are going to change 120. So 120 is our radius of our counterweight, and we need to add more to this because that's going to shrink the counterweight on this side, reducing the amount of mass and pushing that center of mass over into the middle a little bit more. So if I go to 110, we'll have a look and see. Oh, no, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to go the other way. I wanted to go to 130. So we're going to see how 130 looks when we hit finish sketch. Okay, so we've moved a little bit further, but not quite enough. So we're going to go back in here and we're going to do 140 this time. And then we're going to hit finish sketch. Oh, and look at that. We are getting really, really quite close. Oh, in fact, we have gone all the way back the other way, but just ever so slightly. So if I zoom back out here, this hole in the middle here is about 22 millimeters. So across my entire screen is 22 millimeters, and we've got a couple of pixels out. So this weapon at the moment is probably balanced enough. We go measure between this point, and can I select? Yes, I can. Okay, so the distance between these two things is 0.047 millimeters, favoring the weapon tooth. So we could mess around more if we wanted to and change the sketch and get the sketch to actually work, but 0.04 millimeters between the center of gravity and the actual drawn in center of this weapon is next to nothing. The machining of this blade will do more to throw off the center of gravity than that will, I would assume. That is how you design up a weapon. This is obviously a pretty simple, straightforward weapon design. There's a lot of mirroring and stuff going on here, which makes all of the internal changes and adjustments really, really easy to do. You can 100% go into this and mess around with some different bits and pieces, change the weapon teeth and all of that kind of stuff. But if you go something that's not symmetric, then your balance is also going to not need to be not symmetric, because if your weapon tooth has only got a tooth on one side and not got a tooth on the other, you will pull your center of gravity down this way somewhere, and you're going to have to add more countermass over here than you have over here to get that to kind of center back up again. I really, really wouldn't recommend that. I would recommend using the mirroring techniques that I've showed here, because it's a quick and easy way to make sure that everything is balanced around one axis, which is this axis. So all you need to worry about is getting this axis correct, and then everything should just sit down and play nicely and everything will go smoothly. Just quickly, I thought I'd round this design off on camera and just finish off the last little bit that I need to do, which is to do the bolt holes for my weapon setup. So my weapon setups have 6 M5 bolts in amongst everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a line, and that line is going to be 15.5 mil long, like this. So again, this is going to be a construction line because I don't actually need it in the sketch. All I need is that point, and I'm going to create a M5 circle. So that's a 5 mil circle. Boom, just like that. We're also going to dimension that so that it does the right things. Cool. So now we've got a 5 mil hole in this weapon design, and to create these 6 points that I need, all I'm going to do is go circular pattern. I'm going to select both the outer ring and the point, because the points can be quite useful, and then use the center point and do that, and then we're just going to jump that all the way up to 6 and hit OK. So now I've got my 6 holes in here that I need to get my weapon bolted through, and I'm just going to hit finish sketch. Now I will probably change this to maybe 5.1, 5.2 before actually sending it off to the laser cutter. But again, by doing that circular pattern, if I change this in any way, so if we just go 3, all of them change. So using these type of tools make your life a lot quicker and a lot easier in Fusion 360. Now we're going to go finish sketch, and what you'll realize is that this has not changed that much. The extrude hasn't actually taken into account these holes, and all I need to do is once again go into here and go edit feature, and then deselect all of these, and boom, we create the new holes like that. And our center of mass shouldn't change because these are rotationally symmetric around this point, so the center of mass should be totally fine. I will also say as a final note, the reason I did the extrude in 2 directions is so that this center point and the center of gravity line up perfectly. By doing the extrude as a double width extrude, or as a 2-direction extrude, you're knocking out this direction as a balancing direction, because the center of mass is going to line up with the sketch. That's our weapon done. Now we actually need to get it to a file type that we can export, and we also need to export it so that we can send it off to a laser cutter or a water jet cutter or whatever. Now, the type of file that normally is used for that is a DXF, and you can create DXFs in Fusion. It's a little bit convoluted though, so we're just going to quickly run through that together. The first thing to do is create a sketch. Then we're going to select the face of our weapon here. This does technically bring in all the lines, but just to be on the safe side, I then go into create, into project include, and project, and then select the weapon itself, and hit OK. Now you can see all of the points, all of the centers of all of your bolt holes, all of that stuff is all now included. And we're just going to hit finish sketch, and that sketch is now sitting there. So if we hide the body, there you go, we have our sketch with all of our lines included. So that's sketch number 2, and then all we're going to do is go save as DXF. And that will pop up a thing that you can then save out your DXFs, and you save them somewhere and then email them off to a manufacturer, and they should be able to cut your files from there. So that's going to be it for this video. If you have any suggestions for future tutorials and things that you would like to see on this channel, please leave me a comment down below. Other than that, I hope you guys have enjoyed this one, and I will see you in the next video.